there! Welcome to another episode of Culinary Alchemy, and I am still your alchemist, Cassie H. Today we're going to be making gnocchi. Gnocchi is a traditional Italian dumpling. Now to go with the gnocchi, we are making glazed carrots, which is a Roman dish, and tomato sauce covered chicken, which is kind of a Cassie being sort of lazy. Now for allergies today, it's really awesome. As always, at Culinary Alchemy, we'll be making gluten-free food because I'm allergic to gluten and corn. However, today we're going to be making the gnocchi, which is vegetarian if you're okay with eggs. It's also dairy-free, gluten-free, and nut-free. Yay! The carrots are, as far as I know, entirely allergy-friendly. The chicken, not vegetarian unless you're okay with chicken, but it's also gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free, shebang. So, here's what you're going to need to make everything. For the gnocchi, we've got 2 potatoes, I think they're russet. We've got a 3/4 cup of rice flour instead of regular flour. You could use whatever kind you wanted. We're going to be using Parmesan cheese. I realize that's not dairy-free. However, you could use a 1/2 cup of flour instead of Parmesan cheese. No big. 2 eggs, and we're going to be using a coconut and avocado blend oil, 4 tablespoons. For the carrots, we've got our carrots, roughly 1.5 cups. I didn't measure, I just poured. We're going to use honey, just enough to drizzle, and cinnamon, just enough to cover. Super easy. Now for the chicken, we've got 3 chicken breasts. So I've got a 1/2 teaspoon of parsley, dried, a full teaspoon of oregano, also dried, can of tomatoes, I think it's 8 ounces. We're going to use about a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic, and salt and pepper to taste on just about everything. So, what you'll need instrument-wise, you need a fork. You've got 2 things that you need this fork for, so keep it handy. Can opener. Anytime you use cans, you can opener. Spatula, food processor with multiple bowls. So, let's get started. To start with the gnocchi, we've got our 2 potatoes that we need to stab with a fork. This lets steam escape as they are cooking. And I'm just going to stab these several times. Deeper than I meant to stab. Now I've just got them in a glass dish that is oven proof. Lovely potatoes. Now you don't put water in here. You're going to put these in your 400-degree oven for about 40 minutes until tender. While the potatoes are cooking in the oven, we're going to make our tomato sauce really quickly. So what I have here, this is for my food processor. It's just an individual little processing cup for like making smoothies or whatnot. And this is much bigger than our canned tomatoes, so that's what we're going to use really quick. So we've got our can of tomatoes. This is a fire roasted diced tomato. I don't think it has any seasonings of its own besides having awesomely fire roasted tomatoey goodness. And to that we're going to add the teaspoon of oregano, 1/2 teaspoon of parsley, full teaspoon of minced garlic. I use a can because it saves time. I'm also a little lazy. So we're going to lid this up. Make sure if you use your individual little container, there's always a fill line. Go below that because you don't want eruptions to happen. That's not fun. So latch it in place. Prepare for the noise. Alright. Just a few small pulses and you are done. So you open your container. Lovely homemade tomato sauce. Super fast. So you pour this over the chicken. I had to change containers that my chicken was in because I have a small oven. You see this big one here, it has issues. It doesn't like working. I don't like fighting with it. So, spread this over. Now because I switched the chicken over, I had to wash my hands several times. Your hands sometimes get dry. Deal with it. Salt, put on top, pepper. Now I've got a pepper grinder this time. And as you can see, it is very full. Just crack some pepper on top. And this will go in the oven with your potatoes. 400 works, and then once the potatoes come out, lower it down to 350 so you don't burn anything. It should take almost an hour all told, and until the thermometer comes out 160 degrees. Get these in. Yay! Time to wash your hands again. Nasty chicken fingers. For the glazed carrots, I have them in another glass microwavable dish. So you just kind of put them in haphazardly. They don't need water to cook. You put cinnamon, like I said, to cover. Alright. And then honey to cover. Just a drizzle. I like a crosshatch because it's easy. A little bit of your oil. Sometimes I use like a tablespoon of butter, but this works too. So just drizzle on a bit of oil. And you microwave it between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on how awesome your microwave is. And that's done. All right, the oven just went off. But before we start getting all excited, I'm going to stab my potatoes with a fork to make sure they are completely tender. So, I'm going to need a second hot pad. That there, folks, is called forethought, or lack thereof. So, potatoes removed. Tell my oven to stop freaking out. Stab. Now they're still a little bit hard in the center. So I think about 5 more minutes at 400 degrees. So, we'll return these to the oven. Most likely what happened was the adding the chicken to the oven took a lot of the heat. So, bake at 400 for, my oven hates going down in time. 10 minutes works, and I'll just make sure to stop it at 5. Meantime, we're going to just flip over our chicken really quick. So, take your fork, stab the chicken, flip over. All right. Back in. So, pull my potatoes back out, change the oven down to 350 for my chicken. And I'm thinking these will be done now. This is a fresh fork. I just pulled it out of the drawer. Much better. Alright, that one's still a little bit hard, but that'll be okay. So, while these are still warm, need to peel them. Perhaps a fork might not be the best thing. What I'm going to do, I think I'm going to grab my peeler. Be a little bit faster. Alright, so peel potatoes while they're hot. It's not very fun. It hurts a lot. I made a rhyme. Potatoes are all peeled. And by the way, the reason why we peeled them after was to trap in the steam. It helps them cook faster. You want to stab it to give it vents for the steam, but pretty much you want them to steam from the inside. That way you're not adding any external cooking things and it cooks faster. Also, the outside gets really hard if you peel it and then bake it. It's a silly mess. So let's not get into that. But for now, we've got our 2 peeled potatoes. We have a food processor. Let's introduce them. I don't think the potatoes will like this very much. But that's okay. So, close it up. I'm going to put this on blend. Alright, I've had to stop it twice to scrape down the bowl. You might want to cut them down into smaller chunks with a butter knife, but this is pretty nice. I didn't do that, and I peeled out a few small pieces that weren't cooked all the way through. You can see it's still steaming a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our flour first. Also, I should show you something first. These potatoes are very starchy, and you can see, sort of, it's very sticky, much more sticky than you would expect it to be. That's because beating it up like we did, we've let the starch build up, and that's going to help replace flour somewhat. It's going to pretend like it's gluten, which is what you want it to do, especially if you're making it gluten-free. So, 3/4 cups of rice flour added to the mix. 1/4 half, three-quarters, and half a cup of Parmesan. Like I said, if you don't want to use Parmesan, just use half a cup extra of flour. Lid this back up. I'm going to set it on the dough setting. Basically, we're cooling this down a bit. That way, when we put the eggs in, they don't turn into scrambled eggs. That's not what we want. All right. All right, potatoes are blended. They look very crumbly, but I think they're pretty well cool enough that we can add the eggs in. First, I'm going to put in 4 tablespoons of oil. This is our coconut avocado blend. You could use olive oil or coconut oil on its own, or avocado oil on its own. Avocado oil is incredibly good for you. Also, I've got this pot over here of salted water getting ready to boil, because that's how we're going to cook the gnocchi. And it takes a bit of time to warm up, so I wanted to get it started early. 4 tablespoons of oil. Put the lid back on that. My eggs, which I have taken out of their shells. 1, 2. And back on dough we go. Stop every few seconds to scrape down your bowl. Chicken just went off, so we're going to check that real quick. Temperature for chicken to be done at is 160 degrees Fahrenheit. If you do not have a thermometer, I suggest buying one. This one here is an instant read, so I've set it to on and Fahrenheit because I am from the US of A. I need it to say Fahrenheit, not Celsius. So, pull up 1 chicken breast, go in from the side up to where the probe shows. 36, 46, 163 degrees. I'm going to double check here because these are thick chicken breasts. 164, good. Nestle that back in there. 4x8, it's very small. Does not like being things picked out of it. 50, 54, 55, 56, 57. That's going really slow. So that one, 157, 158. 160 from that angle. It smells really, really good. 164. 183. So the one in the middle is not 100% done. However, letting them sit in that hot oven will let it coast to last 3 to 4 degrees, and it'll be all right. So, just gonna let them sit in the nice warm oven until we are ready to eat. Which, by the way, is always important. When you're cooking your meat, after it's done cooking, you want to let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes anyway. That way it can coast itself to doneness, and then it won't be like erupting in your face when you go to eat it. So always let your meat rest. Usually you cover it with aluminum foil, or just let it sit in its hot oven for just a few minutes. Let it chill, it'll be fine. You'll be rewarded. Back to our gnocchi. I let this sit in the food processor on blend for about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and it got pretty nice. It got thicker, which is what we want most definitely. But you can see it's not very dry. So I'm going to add a little bit more flour and we'll see what that does to that. So take your flour, about a tablespoon. Just like making gravy, you go a tablespoon at a time until it's done. It's a little bit better. Not a lot of it. You can see it looks a lot like sticky mashed potatoes. We don't want it to be too much more dry, because then when it cooks, it'll just fall apart and it'll be a mess. About another tablespoon. That's pretty good. Alright. So turn off your food processor. Detach the bowl. Put it here. This in the sink. Okay, so on a floured surface, so I'm just gonna flour out. Pour flour all over my counter. Make everything a mess. Spread everything out. All right. Pull out my blades. Don't worry, this one is actually not bladed. This food processor attachment is made for doing dough. I'm not being silly and letting blades touch my skin. Only shaped like a blade. Alright. Clean enough and very sticky. Super sticky. Scrape out your bowl. Super sticky. Never seen mashed potatoes do that. Alright. very resolute about not leaving the pan. Okay, I'm gonna pour a bit more flour on top. It's nice and covered. And now we're going to form this into a log so we can roll this out. Stopping frequently to reflour the surface. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is separate it in half. All right. So you're supposed to go about 3/4 of an inch thick. This thing is huge. This is a bit closer to an inch, but that's okay. So you can actually just use your fingers to separate this into little balls. Roll them up, set them aside. That water is boiling quite happily. So once I get about 4 balls done, we're going to put them in the water. That one's a bit too big. Three, 4. All right. Move this food processor out of the way so you guys can see what's happening here. All right. So this pot of water, it's boiling pretty nicely. So you take your gnocchi ball and you're just going to set it in gently. It won't take very long to cook, 2 or 3 minutes. You'll know they're done when they float to the surface. Not a slotted spoon. Remove them with a slotted spoon when they're done. So go back to making more gnocchi. Stop crowding in one spot, you guys. Spread out, it'll cook faster. It helps if you talk to your food. It totally listens. You won't seem silly. All right, these here, they are floating to the top, as you can see. And so they are done. So you take your slotted spoon, just remove them. I've got just a 9x13 here that was clean. I have a lot of 9x13s. And 4. Now you just add in more gnocchi. Also, if you want to, you can put them in with your slotted spoon, like that. Either way, doesn't matter. I just don't mind dropping them in. I'm going to put 5 in there. And the gnocchi that you've got done, just sprinkle lightly with a bit of salt. That's all that is. Just making more gnocchi. Now that all my gnocchi is done, I've separated them into 5 gnocchi portions. That way I just can pick them up and put them in really quickly. But now I'm left with a great floury mess on my countertop. Now, I want to show you guys something cool. This here is called a bench scraper. Sometimes they're metal and they have a curly end for you to hold on with, and sometimes they're like this. You can use this, it's nice, and I like the rubber ones because they're flexible. You can use this to scrape out a bowl like a cake dough or something, or you can use it with the flat side. It'll get all that stuff right off your counter. Now they sell these at Mega Marts, and they also sell these at specifically like restaurant outlets and such. They can range anywhere from $5 to $25, depending on if you get rubber or metal. Rubber stores easier, and I mean it's a bit nicer on all countertops. But definitely, I would invest in one of these because it's just so nice to get everything cleaned up quickly. All of our gnocchi is done, and I placed it in 9x13 and sprinkled it with salt as soon as it came out of the pot, like I said before. So now we've got our gnocchi done, we've got our chicken done, we've got our carrots done. So it's time to assemble our plates. So first I'm going to take a spoonful of gnocchi, maybe 2 or 3. Now today there's only 3 of us eating, hence the significantly fewer plates. Piece of chicken each. Now traditionally you would put gnocchi in like a potato or a tomato sauce rather, or a cream sauce or something like that. Today we're just using the leftover sauce from the chicken for the gnocchi. However, if you wanted to make your own marinara sauce or use marinara from a jar, I will not judge you. It's entirely your recipe at that point. Some of the carrots. Carrots are super good. I make them all the time. There we go. A few more. And then I've got a spoon here. So put a bit of sauce on the chicken. And then more, just drizzle lightly on top of that gnocchi. Looks absolutely fantastic. Yeah, that is what paper towels were created for. Messes on plates. There we go. All right, thank you for watching today's episode of Culinary Alchemy. As always, please subscribe below. I'm going to put the recipe. And next week, we're going to make Borscht Moskovsky, which is Moscow-style beet soup. Cannot wait! So, thanks for watching. See you guys next week. Bye!